just adjusting something over there. Thank you. All right. Who knows what's happening in 2 weekends, 2 weeks? All right. Super Bowl. I like that. Good. Super Bowl. That's right. So who are you rooting for? We don't know yet who's going, do we? Not the Patriots. Just because I grew up in New England does not mean I'm rooting for the Patriots. I don't. I root for the local team. So, oh man. I like this. In the first service, there was no fans, but people are shouting out 49ers. They're mocking me about what I like. That's good, because you know what that means? You're an avid fan of some football teams. Is that correct? Yes. Now, we're not all as excited. You'd all be really excited if the Dolphins were going, but they're not. So that's why we're kind of quiet in the audience right now. That's okay. That's all right. But a lot of us, we do get excited about football, and there's some really radical fans out there. I'd like you to meet some of them. There's some people that paint their whole bodies for their teams, like this guy's right here. The Eagles. Go Eagles. That's all right. It's all right. And then there's some people that are so excited, they'll brave any weather, right? Because that's their loyalty toward their team. You got this guy right here. I think a lot of that's fake, but if you grew up in Green Bay, I think you probably feel like that all the time, pretty much. And I don't know how long it would take to make that thing, but crazy fans. They'll do anything. Also, someone might shave their body. Let's see what we got. Let's go. Yeah, that's gross. I couldn't even get close to that. I don't even understand that. You got to have a lot of hair to make it stand out like that, I think. So you could do that, or you could do something a little bit more permanent, because that's going to grow back. You could do one of these. That was gratuitous for the Dolphin fans, right? Just get one right there on your belly. And so they're just going crazy. Now, when you think about fans, they're not really a part of the team, are they? I mean, we go, yeah, they're a part of the team because they cheer us on. But they may not even know what a football looks like aside from what they see on TV. I mean, they may never have touched one. I mean, they're not even the water boy. They don't warm the benches, but they're excited about the teams. They want to belong. They're like, this is my team. I wear their colors. I wear my jersey, right? You guys wear your jerseys when you go? Yeah? Who watches the Heat? The Heat? A little bit more excited about that because we feel they have a chance to go one more time, right? 3. So we're excited about them. And we're like, yeah, that's my team. I come with my Heat jersey. I come with my Dolphins, whatever team it is. I know there's some Jets fans out there. And that's right there. And so we get into it because we want to belong, right? We wish we could be right there by the bench, giving them instruction. We want to belong. It's just a symbol to us that we want to belong to something. We want to be a part of something. I mean, isn't that why sometimes we didn't like to be picked last when we were getting called for the team in grade school? Because it's you don't really belong. We all here, but somebody, all right, let's just split them up, or they do something, right? So you don't want to be that person. That's why we join clubs, though, so we can be part of something. We want to belong to something. Or we make friends. Obviously, we want to belong with them. And there's some people that don't really want to associate with humans, and so what they do is they get pets instead, right? And I've got my own little pet community. That's okay. And there's power in those things. That's the power of social websites when you think about it, like Facebook and Vine, if you do that, Instagram or LinkedIn. I know I do that all the time. I mean, you guys, some of you know that. You follow me, and I take pictures of Charlotte, my daughter, and I post them up there. And here's the thing. For the next 2 days, I'm going back to see how many likes she gets, right? You guys want to know, am I liked? Are people really liking? Am I connected? And somehow I feel connected with people a little bit, even if I don't know who they are. Because sometimes I posted stuff about food, and then these weird food things follow you, right? You ever had that? You don't even know where it comes from. I posted something from Hialeah once, and now something about Miami food in Miami is following me all the time. And so, but I don't really know them. So we get kind of this. The idea is that these social networks, they kind of promise us something we want to be included, but really they kind of give about they do about half the job. They don't actually harness the full power of community. I mean, think about it. Anybody like to do selfies in here? Yeah? Uh-huh. So they're like, this one here, we're doing. You've got it down to a 4-step process, right? It's extend arm, duck lips, hand on hip, take pic. It's we're bam, we got it. That's it. But you do that 10 times because you got to get the right picture, right? If it's not the right picture, that ain't good. It's not good. So, we take the best one of those 10, don't we? So the person on Facebook and the person who's watching me on Instagram is only seeing the best of what I got. They're only seeing, I'm putting my best foot forward. They're not seeing like the ugly side. I don't take up the picture when I woke up in the morning like, you know. Your friend might do that and post it on you, but they won't be your friend for very long. But we only see half. So really, these things, even though we're longing maybe for community and for connection or for belonging, we're only getting half of really what we can do. And so a relationship with half a person isn't really that great. But whether we realize it or not, we were made for community. We really were. All of us were. And these things are just indicators that we want to be a part of some community. In the beginning of the Bible, in the book of Genesis, God shows up and he starts creating everything. He creates Adam, and then he has Adam kind of tend the garden, and he says, I'm going to have you name the animals. And so I think God does this a little bit more for Adam than he does for God. But all these animals come before Adam, and he starts naming them. And the symbolism there, too, is that if you ever named anything in the Bible, then you had authority over it. So he's naming all the animals. But as he's naming them all, he kind of notices something. He notices there's nothing good for him. There's nobody that he can kind of relate to, because they're all animals and he's a human. And so that's what the Bible says in Genesis 2:20. It says, so Adam gave names to all the cattle, to the birds of the air, and to every beast of the field. But for Adam, there was not found a helper comparable to him. So he's looking, and like maybe he saw the apes, and he's like, you're kind of like me. And he starts hanging out with them, but they're a little hairy and smelly, and he's realizing, this isn't doing it. This is not quite doing it. And so he's like, he realizes, man, there's something I'm missing. And God, interestingly enough, in the first days of the Bible, the first day he creates and he says it's good. And then the second day he says it's good. And then he keeps saying it's good, except there's this interesting time during the creation where he says it's not good. Listen to the verse. It's also from Genesis 2. It says, and the Lord God said, it is not good that man should be alone. I will make him a helper comparable to him. So he's like, hey, this is the one thing. It's not good that he's alone. So right from the very beginning, God created you and me. He created Adam with this void. Not just for God. We've heard about the void from God, but there's a void to connect with other people relationally. And so God had created us with this in our heart. And I guess if we were honest with ourselves, if we looked really deep down, we believe, I think deep down, that we too want to be connected to a community. It's screaming out to us from the guys painting their bodies and whatever else they're doing, that we want to belong. We want to be connected. The problem is, though, with community a lot of times is it comes with some risk, doesn't it? That's the problem. It involves us getting to know and to trust other people. Sometimes that trust, when it gets broken, makes it harder for us then to continue to want to pursue that community. You've had that group of friends, maybe think back to high school, you had some, and then they started some rumor behind your back, right? And I can't believe she said that about me. And now you don't want to talk. You don't even want to talk to them anymore, and you got to break it up. She's not my BFF anymore. And so we're not connecting with them, and then we learn the next time, well, I got to make sure I check these people out. And so it makes it harder for us to become connected to a group or a community. And, maybe we've gotten burned, or maybe there was those people that when the chips are down, you thought you had great friendship, you thought you could rely on them, but maybe they were in a friendship for you for some other reason than you thought. And you're like, well, where were you? I thought you were going to be there, and they weren't there. So now it's becoming harder and harder for us to trust. And so sometimes we tend to resist new communities. I'm here right now. I got my family. I've got what I got. I don't need anything else. I'm doing okay. Because what's going to happen if we go to a new community? It's going to challenge me maybe to change. Maybe I'm going to have to reveal something about myself, or, I've spent a lot of time building up walls to protect myself. And if I break those down, then people are going to rush in. It's going to be anarchy inside, and I'm going to have trouble. And, we just keep going. We find it difficult maybe because of our past experiences to reconnect and to get into new community. And maybe after enough letdowns too, we've decided, that's it. I can do life on my own, right? At one point, I bet every one of us has said that. I know in my life, I'm like, that's it. I can do this on my own. I can do all right. I can survive, right? But I think God has something bigger in mind for you and me than just surviving. God has something called living. And God has some plans and potential for you and me that's so much greater. And if we feel at this moment in our lives like, yeah, it's just me, that's all I need, then maybe we're missing out. You see, there's power in community. And there's a power that happens in community that we cannot get on our own. It can only happen when we're in a group of other people. And if we understood its power, if we really understood its power and what it could do, then maybe we would realize that the reward of community is far greater than the risks that come with it. Last week we started the series Begin with Pastor Bob, and it's first steps for a journey of faith. And we're talking about in this series these main essentials, these things that help us, if we were as a Christian or even a new Christian, these main things in our lives that are going to give us the most boost, that are going to help us grow, that are going to help us stay connected with God. And today we're going to talk about, you probably guessed it, community. That's going to be the thing we're going to talk about. We're going to turn to the book of Acts. So if you have a Bible or you have your app, you can get out, you can move to chapter 2. I also want you to take out your outline. If you would, we're going to go through that. But pull out your connection card. Keep that ready because we're going to talk about that today and a couple things that are on it. But if we're in the book of Acts in chapter 2, this is when God really begins to start the church. Jesus died and he was resurrected and then he ascended. And before he ascended, he said, go to Jerusalem. So the guys are hanging out, the disciples, and they're praying together one day in this upper room. Or it wasn't an upper room, but it was a room. And they're praying, and then all of a sudden, the whole place begins to shake like crazy. And like tongues of fire descend upon them, and the Holy Spirit comes upon them, and they start talking and preaching the word of God in different languages, and everybody hears it, and they're like, whoa, what the heck is going on? You guys are crazy. And they start listening, and all of a sudden, all these people start getting saved because of what they're saying. And I want to read to you what it looked like in those early days. And we're going to read in verse 41. It says this, then those who gladly received his word were baptized. And they're talking about Peter. Peter was preaching. And that day about 3,000 souls were added to them. And they continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and fellowship, in the breaking of bread and in prayers. Then fear came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were done through the apostles. Now all who believed were together and had all things in common, and sold their possessions and goods, and divided them among all as anyone had need. So continuing daily with one accord in the temple, and breaking bread from house to house, they ate their food with gladness and simplicity of heart, praising God and having favor with all people. And the Lord added to the church daily those who were being saved. So here's this church, this picture of this church, and like thousands of people are coming in a day, 3,000. And every day they're adding more. And if you read through the book of Acts, you'll see that there are some days like 5,000 come. And all these people are just keep gathering. And they have like this very communal kind of living situation. There are people, if they had need, they were being met, it said. They would share things. They had things in common. They would live and they would come from house to house. And it was like this giant like fellowship. Fellowship means having oneness together. They were just all together, and God was doing these amazing wonders and works through them. It was this powerful church. And God started his church in this way. And it was like it's modeled for you and I. Why is community so powerful? We're going to talk about that today. And the first thing in your outline is this. Community has the power to influence us. Community has the power to influence us. I'm going to read you a definition for influence. It says this, invisible or indirect action exerted by one thing or another or a person on another. So influence is a tangible effect that we feel from something else, whether it's direct or indirect. And I'd like to help illustrate that a little bit by a device that I purchased through the mail. And so it's called a Tesla coil. It's this little guy right over here. And Nikola Tesla, he's not the guy who created the car. Someone asked me that. He was a scientist and an electrician, and he had this dream of powering a city without wires. Imagine electrical power going through the air, powering something. And so he built this thing this is a modern day small version of a Tesla coil. And you see all the sparks and everything that are flying. But this thing can actually send electricity through the air, not just like that, in ways you also can't see. I have a small one right here. I'm going to dim the lights for a minute so you guys can see this a little bit more clearly. And what happens is when we turn on the Tesla coil, I got to find my little switch here. There we go. And then I pull out a bulb. I should be able to, what? Look at that. Amazing. Ooh, go ahead. You guys can do it. Look at that. It's not even touching, and yet electricity somehow is lighting this bulb. And look at this. I kept one in the package just so you see there's nothing up my sleeve. There we go. And what's happening here is he's devised this method, and actually he built one that was large enough to power a city, that you could power from miles away. And the idea is that this device, in whatever way it's working, is having an effect on something else. It's actually adding power to this thing. And in fact, he created this idea for generators and all sorts of things that could run based on a Tesla coil, using the power of the Tesla coil. And a community is often like that for you and me. We don't necessarily see exactly what it is, but we're being affected and influenced by it, because that's what communities do. The people that you hang around with, the people that you are your inner circle, I mean, if you think about it, they're the most influential people in your life. And it's the community that is forming who you are. In fact, if you show me your community, the people that you hang out with, I can show you what your future is going to look like. Did you ever notice that who you hang out with, right? You start to become like them. I have this little theory, okay? And I, people say I don't like to talk about religion and politics, right? I think they don't like to talk about religion because usually they're going to be challenged in some way, and hey, I don't want to know that, I don't want to do that. But in politics, here's my theory: we all don't really know much about politics, right? We don't. And so we fear if we get into that debate with somebody, they're going to say something, and I really don't know about that, but I'm going to say something, and we have these arguments, and then we walk away frustrated because we want to believe in the ideal that we believe in, but with corruption sometimes too, they bring up this point, and then you're like, oh my gosh, and so we just don't even want to get into that. But how did you form your political opinion in the first place? Not for everybody, but for a majority of people. If you look, if their family was Democrat, they're going to be a Democrat. And if their family was Republicans, then they're probably going to be a Republican. That's the way it is. You look and you go, well, why did you form your league? Well, my dad was, my mom was. And so we learn just to be that because of the influence of the people that are around us. And then you take that person, whichever one, maybe they go off to college and now they form another community with a professor or somebody else in a connection, and now maybe their views have changed. But I'll say this: if you're a Republican, right? Let's just say you're one Republican in this whole room and you have to do life with all these people. Eventually, you're going to start, those Democratic points of view are probably going to start sounding good, or they're going to start being convincing because you're only one and there's like 100 of them influencing you. And if you were a Democrat among a bunch of Republicans and that's all you ever hung out with, they're probably going to start influencing you. If you hang out with a bunch of atheists and that's all you hang out with, you're probably going to start believing, or those arguments are going to start sounding pretty good. Well, what about this about? Yeah, I never really thought about that. Yeah, and what about this here? And you're going to be like, yeah, and I don't know if I have an answer for that. And we're going to be influenced by those that we hang out with. In my BC days, before Christ, right? I just want you to know, don't be shocked, okay? Because I was just like everyone else here. And before I came to know Christ, I used to hang out with my friends, and we used to go out and we would drink. In fact, we would drink, like that's basically all we would do. I grew up in a small town. We didn't do much. We would go, one summer we spent like every single night at this one guy's apartment. It was like an efficiency, and everybody brought a case of beer. So that's all we did. And now all I have is, Steve Miller tunes going through my head. I know every lyric, okay? Don't quiz me. I know it's a little bit dating me. But listen, that's all I did. And we hung out. That's what we did. Well, after a while, before I was a Christian, I was thinking, this isn't always working out that great for me. My life isn't changing that much. Things aren't really happening. And I'm thinking, I also don't like waking up feeling the way I feel, and I don't like because my pocket's empty because I spent all my money drinking. So when we were going out, I didn't get rid of my friends, so I still hung out with them. But I said, guys, tonight I'm not going to drink. I'm just going to kind of stop drinking. So we went to this bar or this pub, and there we are at the bar, and I ordered a club soda, right, with lime. And because that's good stuff, and I didn't have any alcohol. So I'm sitting there drinking, and they're like, oh, you're not going to drink anymore? Really? You're not going to do that? And I'm like, no. And then I go to the bathroom, okay? When I come back, they're all kind of snickering. I'm like, all right. And I drank a drink of my club soda, and they all start laughing. And it tastes funny because they put a shot of vodka in there when I was gone. And I'm like, but what do you think I did? I drank it, and I kept drinking. Because who you hang out with is going to influence you. I mean, I want to be like them, but here's the interesting thing about a community. They want you to be like them too, right? They weren't like that comfortable that I wasn't drinking, so they're like, come on, be like us too. We'll all be something together. And so your community that you pick, if it has powerful influence on you, it matters, doesn't it? The community that you pick will be important. The Bible puts it this way in the book of Proverbs. It says, he who walks with wise men will be wise. Okay, if you walk with wise people, you're going to be wise. But the companion of fools will be destroyed. So, like, you got a choice. Wise and be wise, or hang out with the fools and be destroyed. In the book of Proverbs are saying to us, listen, here's your choice. You can pick one. You don't have to be stuck in one or the other, and they're different. Not all communities are the same, and communities have the power to influence. In fact, communities can often be like this right here. In a couple weeks or like 3 weeks, it's going to be Valentine's Day. A lot of you guys are going to be buying these, right? What is it? Box of chocolates. Okay. Now, a community is a lot like a box of chocolates. I'm gonna say something, and I want you to finish it in your best Forrest Gump accent. Are you ready? You guys ready? All right. Mom always said communities are like a box of chocolates because... All right, good. I heard some Gump in there too. I like that. That's right. It's like a box of chocolates. And, the thing about boxes of chocolates, we always had them around our house. I don't know why. People give them to you and stuff like that. And a lot of times, this one has like a legend. They don't always have a legend. And my grandmother, especially if it was a bad box of chocolates, right? Because there's the bad kind. You ever get the ones that have like the cream, chocolate cream, right? They're gross. There's like one that you like. Maybe it's the coffee flavor. That's the one I like. But all the rest, you don't like them. And they taste kind of fake, right? Because you got a lot of fake people out there. And then some have like... You got to have some nuts, right? There's ones with the nuts, and we're not sure if we like those because we got some nuts and some are chewy. I don't know what that means, but... And my grandmother would take one like this, and let's see, last time, these are all rock hard. I just picked the wrong box of chocolates. She would take those because they were mostly bad, and she didn't really, she wanted to get a good one. She would take the bottom of the chocolate and push her finger into it, right? So that she could see and identify what was in there, and then she'd place it back in if it wasn't in. So if we came up and we said, okay, I'm going to have a piece of chocolate, I'd pick it up, and there'd be like, there's like a hole in the bottom of mine, And then I'd pick up another one. I noticed that all of them were. She pushed in every single one of the box of chocolates. And so you never knew what you were going to get, literally, when you picked up the box of chocolates. But a lot of us, this one is Hershey Pot of Gold, which is like half good. Can I have a volunteer? Alex, could you come here for a second? There you go. Thank you for being brave. Just pass them around. Help yourself to a box of chocolate. I kept that chocolate so I didn't handle the others. But Doris wanted them. But like, if I were to offer you a box of chocolates, would you want the Russell Stovers? I buy that in CVS, or do you want Godiva? Right? Okay. Right? It's right. I mean, I don't have to prove that point. All boxes of chocolates are not equal, and we want the best ones. But why is it when it comes to our community that we don't always recognize that there are better communities to be a part of and that they can influence us, and we have the choice to pick one that's better or not? A year ago, I grew up with a friend from high school, and when he graduated, he got married very young. He was like 20. And his children are in their 20s, their young 20s. And I grew up with them. I knew them as kids. We hung out together. I mean, and his wife and they would talk about God. They would see us pray. They knew about God. And his oldest son passed away last year from a drug overdose. And so I went back to do the funeral. And after the funeral was over, I had done the message. So I'm with his other son and daughter, and we're driving in the car. And the son starts talking to me, and I kind of probe a little bit, find out what they believe, and they're like, I don't really believe the son says about God. I don't really believe in God. It's really fake and stuff. And he starts talking about how engineers have made a chicken or something like that, and scientists. And he starts talking about stuff, and he talks about the spaghetti monster. He's talking about evolution. I'm like, oh, you've read Darwin, not Darwin, Dawkins. You've read Richard Dawkins, haven't you? And he's like, yeah. And I said, have you read anything else? He's like, no. And I'm like, I start giving him some sound answers because I've studied some of these things a little bit. I had enough knowledge to give him a little bit on evolution and talk about it and give him a better answer than what he'd been hearing, because that's all he'd been reading. And I said, have you read anything else besides Richard Dawkins? He's like, no. And I said, do you know that there's debates online that you can watch at YouTube? John Lennox, who's also an Oxford professor, they're both Oxford professors. He's a believing Christian, and they debate. and you'd get some really good answers to some of the things that you're hearing. And because he was hearing only one thing, he was being convinced that there was no God. And it was interesting because the daughter was quiet the whole ride, didn't say a word. And I came back to Florida, and when I got here on Facebook, she sent me a note, and she talked about a bunch of things, and I just wanted to read this part of the note to you. This quote said, "I've been really out there with my faith, questioning where I'm at, but hearing what you had to say today brought me back to a better place. The fact that Josh is atheist, and Sean, that's her husband, has been questioning his faith too for a while, and leaning that way, I just needed something to pull me back. Thank you for everything. We all love you so much." I was thinking, man, she needs some influences in her life, some influencers. And I'm not suggesting she gets rid of her husband and her brother. What I am saying is that you get a community of people that will take you to where you want to go and the things that you believe in. She believed in God, but she was struggling deeply in her faith because the people that were closest to her did not believe. And my heart went out to her in those moments. I think all of us have to ask ourselves this question: is the current community that you're in influencing you the way you want to be influenced? Is that happening for you today? Because communities are powerful. They're powerful influencers. But communities, there's a second thing also about the power of communities, and they help us to grow. Community has the power to grow us. I did a growth group about 7 years ago. Growth groups, you've seen it. You saw the ad here or the promotion for it. And I used to oversee the growth groups, and this was like my first all men growth group. So I was kind of curious as to what was going to happen. And I show up there that day. It was at another guy's house that we had arranged for, and there was like 8 guys. And these were kind of, rough guys, rough around the edges, right? I'm like, I wonder what's going to happen here. And there's one guy in the group that showed up, and he'd never been to a growth group before, just barely started going to church. I mean, his head was so clipped down, it was almost like it was shaved. He was missing his 2 front teeth right here, and he talked with a really deep voice, and he looked real tough and mean. And I was like, you're not going to beat me up, are you? And I'm talking with this guy, and I'm like, oh my God, I have no idea what's going to happen here. And I'm like, all right, guys, why don't we start with prayer, And I could swear this guy laughed. I'm not kidding. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going to happen here? I didn't think the guy was going to beat me up, and I'm like, this is going to be a challenge. Well, let me tell you about this guy. This guy decided, well, I'm just going to go with this. And he went with the curriculum, and and we had nightly work that we did, then questions that you would take home as you read, and he would come with it filled out. Both sides, overlapping, and he had the most to contribute. He grew the most. He was challenged by the other guys, and we all grew incredibly because we heard about life situations in this guy's life and how he dealt with it. Now I can apply it to my life, and sometimes we would even get well, stop being a wimp or whatever it was, because guys do that. And these guys were actually studying. Did you hear what I just said? Guys studying, right? They were reading and doing this, and this guy grew. And this guy became a Christian. I made it a point in this particular group, because it was only 7 or 8, that I would eat lunch or go to dinner with them alone so that I could spend some time getting to know them. And I remember distinctly the breakfast that I had with him in the Denny's that we ate at, and he was just telling me his views on God, which were just way out there. But now he's a Bible-toting Christian who goes to church because he grew in his growth group, and he was challenged to grow, because that's what communities do. They help us to grow. Communities help keep us accountable, especially a growth group like that. We understand what accountability means because you went to grade school at one point, and you went to learn math and science and chemistry and history and English. And why did that help you? Because you were going to get tested on it, and you were going to have to turn in assignments, and accountability helped us to grow. And that's what growth groups do for you and me. We get plugged into a community of believers, a group of people who are like-minded like us, and they help move us and motivate us to learn. The Bible says this: as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens the countenance of his friend. Right? Great. If I have 2 swords, and one's out here and one's out here, they're not going to get very sharp or whatever, Because it says they gotta what? They gotta rub. You gotta rub together. A lot of us want to grow way out here, but we don't want to get involved in the community that's going to help us grow, that's going to sharpen us, that's going to help us learn. But the Bible's telling us, listen, the way it happens is when you rub shoulders with other Christians, other like-minded people like you, and that's how it rubs off on you, and you begin to grow. At Calvary Fellowship, here at Calvary Fellowship, we think that the most profound way where growth really happens is in a growth group. That's what we believe. Because it's then that on your own you're studying. Because we believe that the truths that you learn, the self-learned or self-discovered truths, are the ones that are the best. Sometimes we can come to church and we can just hear a guy speaking up on a stage and we can see him pass out chocolates, but we could walk out of here and it never really sunk in because we never internalized it. But when we study, when we give our opinion, when we think about it, when we wrestle with it, when we hear from other people, it's then that we really begin to grow in our faith. You know, there's three primary ways to get involved in a community, in any church, or especially our church. The first one is to come to church as you did on a Sunday. And that's good. And I want to commend everyone for doing that. But you know what? It's really not enough because of what I just said. We can come, we can kind of sit in the back, we can hear a message, we can leave, get in our car, and go away. And it doesn't really have to affect us, but I can feel like I'm doing something right because I'm where God is. So it's important for us to really take another step. And there are two other ways. One, it might sound crazy, but it's serving. It's actually serving. Serving in the church. Because what happens is if you ask somebody who's serving for the right reason here at this church, you're going to be amazed at the answer. They're going to say, yeah, I grew more from serving than I have in other ways. Why is that? Because we begin to see God from a different perspective and we get involved with a group of other people. If there's guys setting up, there's a group of guys setting up in the morning and we're learning from them, we're talking to them, we become part of a community. Each individual area is like a team of people, almost a little family, as they show up and they serve in their areas doing what they know to do. They call each other, they talk to each other, even if it's just to fill in, but they know each other. So serving is a powerful way. If you want to serve, if your connection card is there, just check it off if you want to take that step. Personally, I think we should do all three. And the third one is, of course, a growth group. And growth groups are simply meetings that happen outside of church in homes, and we do it 3 times a year. In fact, you can sign up for one right now. And the growth group, it happens once a week for about 10 weeks long. And it's the type of commitment that we make that it's not too great because we live in a very urban area. We know that your schedules are difficult. But we have the opportunity to begin to grow. You know, community has the power, and growth groups have the power to help us when we're struggling. And it becomes like our family. And that's like the third point in your outline, is that a community has the power to help us. All of us go through seasons in life. We all do. We all have different seasons. The seasons of life that are good, and there are seasons of life that are bad. And right now, you may be in a good season, so you're like thinking, yeah, it seems so far away. Funny, life is kind of like that. It's very funny. When we're in a good season, we can't even foresee the bad things occurring in our life. But the Bible tells us in Ecclesiastes that to every season, every time there is a season. You guys probably know this song, right? To everything, turn, turn, turn. All right, I won't stop singing my flat voice. There's a season that's coming in your life. There's a trial that will come in your life. There may be a temptation in your life. Maybe a season of doubt that is coming in your life, or fear that's coming in your life, or guilt. And any of these things can happen or can be triggered by things that happen in our lives. You know, the job that you worked at for 10 years that you never saw it coming, suddenly they have to lay you off. The day before, everything was great. The day after, we're wondering what's going to happen. How are we going to make ends meet? How are we going to pay the rent next month? All of a sudden, with one little thing, our life can get flipped. It can happen that way with a relationship that we thought was going well, and suddenly that's in trouble right now. We're struggling in that area. Or it could be something else that's a little bit deeper, like an illness or a sickness that just kind of wrecks our life. Our life was going fine, and then suddenly it's tossed upside down. And at those moments, we're all going to need a little bit of help. Last time, I wanted to show you a video that we did a while back for growth groups, and I think it kind of illustrates this point, so I'm going to direct you to the center screen.
Hey Billy, growth groups are starting in a couple of weeks. Do you want to join my group? No thanks, man. I'm good on my own. Yeah. Who are those guys? They're bad news. I'm out of here.
Hey, Billy! Come here, let me talk to you.
Get away from me, man. Dude, I don't want no trouble. I gotta go. My butt cheeks. Why is this happening to me, man? Hey, isn't that Billy over there?
Oh my goodness! The lion's got Billy's butt!
You guys better get away right now. Come on, guys. Let's go get him. Oh, hey. Everyone relax. There's too many of them. I can't fight them all as a group. Let's get out of here. Thanks, guys. Next time, I'm joining your growth groups. Hey, anytime, Billy. We're here for you, buddy. Doing life on your own can be tough. Join a growth group and learn with others about God and grow in your faith. Sign up on your connection card today.
Maybe some of you guys remember that one. Maybe you weren't here before. I like the verse that was there. It's a very powerful verse, an important verse that we sometimes don't think about. We maybe know it, but we really don't think about it as relevant to our lives. It says this: be sober, be vigilant, because the adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. You know, the description here that God is giving us, he says, yeah, there's a God out there. There's also this guy called the devil out there, and he's on like a 24-hour mission to mess you up. We don't think about that a lot. We don't really think about that, but it's there. He says there's a spiritual battle, and there's gonna come a time that something is gonna happen in your life, and you're gonna need help. Every now and then, we all need a little help. And so we get plugged into a place where people who can help us in those times. When I was, when I was younger, I think, I think that every one of us needs help now and again, right? And I want you to think about the group that you're in right now. Not the growth group, but that circle of people that you're around. Those people that you trust. Those people that maybe you would call your community. Are those the people when you're down and when you need help? Are those the people that will be able to help you? You know, when I first came to know Jesus, I wasn't radically transformed. You know, I had heard about the stories of those people who'd come to know the Lord, right? And they stopped drinking, they stopped smoking, they stopped pornography, everything in one day, and they're like, hey, everything's awesome. And I'm like, Lord, why didn't that happen to me? Right? I don't know about you if you can identify, but it didn't go away, all these problems that I had. It was a struggle for me. It didn't go away in one day. And here's what happened. Early in my walk with God, I would blow it. I would blow it big time. And so then I would feel horrible. I'm a loser. God, you can't love me. God, I can't go to church. There are a bunch of great people and I suck. You know, that's how I felt. We've all been there. We get discouraged because we might blow it. You know, Satan's waiting for us to mess up. And he's waiting to jump on us with his whole guilt trip and say, you're not worthy. You're not good. You can't do it. You'll never make it. Just stay where you are. The devil wants to separate you from the herd. He wants you to be out on your own because then you make an easier prey for him. But the great thing was that time when I was younger, I had people who I knew who were Christians. And God has this funny way of doing things, like where he just, all of a sudden they call you up out of the blue, you know, and it's, you know, that God did that on purpose, right? Because it's just at that moment and you get that call and you're like, yeah, I suck. And they're like, oh, what happened? And you start telling them everything, like, listen, and they start encouraging you. They start telling you, yeah, we've all blown it. That's why Jesus came here, because none of us were perfect. That's the very point. And so God came here to die for you. And God knows the mistakes you're going to make. Come on back. And they would encourage me, and I would. You see, we all need to be connected to a community like that. The wisest man who ever lived was Solomon, we believe. And he penned these words. It says, two are better than one because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, one will lift up his companion. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he has no one to help him up again. Again, if two lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one be warm alone? Though one may be overpowered by another, two can withstand him, and a threefold cord is not easily broken. We need encouragement at times, or someone to talk to about really personal things. I have a lot of friends. I don't know if I can always talk with all of them about those personal things. I don't know if they'll always understand. I don't know if they'll give me the right answer or they'll just like, oh, okay, yeah, you'll be okay. Right? We all know we have different types of people in our lives, and it's important to have the ones that are going to challenge us. It's important for us to stay connected to a community. You know, we have this cool gadget. It's called a baby monitor, right? You guys probably know that. My daughter is a year and a month, and we watch her on this at night as she sleeps, okay? Because we put her in there, and we're not sure if she's going to go to bed. If something happens, you don't want to run into that room that's all dark, because then she's up, and now she won't go to sleep, right? So you go and you look to see how she's doing. It's a really cool gadget. I took a picture of her. Actually, this is the first time she stood up on her own. We saw it on the monitor. So I took a picture. I don't know what she's doing on the wall there, but anyway, she's standing up. This thing is awesome, but it has a problem. It has a fault. When it's charging, when it's plugged in, it can last forever. But when I unplug it, it only lasts about 8 hours. It barely makes it through the night. So if I want to take it somewhere else for whatever reason, it hasn't been plugged in, then I have to plug it in, and I got to sit near the plug if I'm going to watch her. And it's kind of like you and I. After a little while, we tend to run out, don't we? If we stay disconnected long enough, we kind of lose some of that energy that we had. We get discouraged. It makes it more difficult for us to come back and get plugged in with people. What I believed when I was a Christian, before I was a Christian, what I believed about Christians was I thought they were kind of just crazy people. I knew God. In high school, I knew who God was. I'd gone to church. I knew who Jesus was. I never had made a decision to follow him, but I thought I was good with God. I was like, yeah, he and I are buddies. We're good. And I believed in him, but I really was like this kind of quiet about everything I believed. And I only knew one Christian in our high school. One. Only one. And this guy had been through drug rehab, and he got radically transformed, and he accepted Jesus, and he came back telling everybody about Jesus, and everybody thought he was kooky and weird and like, you know, some kind of freak. And I did too. I'm like, I believe in God, but I don't want to be like him, right? I just thought, like, he's different. These guys kind of scare me. Christians are kind of weird, and I don't know. And for years, I was like this kind of anonymous churchgoer, if you know who that is. He's the one that goes in the back, right? Just sits in the back. And that's where I preferred it, because then no one could see me. And then I could leave at the end of the service, and I tried to avoid people that are trying to make eye contact with me. I didn't know what these crazy people were going to do to me. You know, it's like, what do you want from me? Get away. I don't know what I was fearing. I don't know. Like, you're going to be nice to me? Oh, no. I was like, I don't know. Like, it was just something in my head. Like, I don't know if I want to become like you, these born-again Christians. We're all born again, right? If we ask Jesus in our heart, we're born again. And it's like, but they were weird. They were weird like that. And let me fast forward. That was high school. I fast forward into college. I found myself one day in an elevator with this guy that was telling me about this community of Christians that played soccer, and they talked about God, and he asked me to be a part of that. Let me tell you how that happened. I lived in a dorm on campus at UMass Amherst. They have like these 26-story buildings that are dorms, and I was on the 10th floor. And when we would go downstairs and outside, they had like this area called the pyramids. There were these structures, and people would advertise and do things on the pyramids and stuff. And one day, as I was coming into my building, they had all these tables out there, and they were signing people up. I'm like, what's going on? So I walked up, and they're like, oh yeah, we're Christians, and we're just signing people up. If they want to hear about God, we'll send somebody to your room, and we'll talk about that and let them know. And I'm like, right. I'm thinking inside, I didn't say that to them, but I'm like, yeah, I'll sign up. So I thought, this will be funny. I'll sign my friend up, you know? So I put my friend's name down there, right? And like, yeah, he'll get a visit from these Christians. So there we are. He happened to be on the same floor as me. And like a couple weeks later, whatever, I'm hanging out. His name was Scott. I'm in his room. His door is open. All of a sudden, this guy shows up. Knock, knock. Is Scott here? And the guy goes, and Scott's like, yeah. And he's like, well, I'm here to talk to you about God because you signed up. And I'm like, you know when you have those moments? I mean, you think everything is like, he did it, he did it, he did it, he did it. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, I can't believe this. And I'm like turning beet red, and I'm like, God, you got me, you know? I'm sitting there when the guy walks in, and I can't get out. He's blocking the door, so too late now. So Scott's like, yeah, I didn't sign up. And he goes, that happens. People sign up their friends for a joke. I'm like, really? It's a good joke. So we talked a little bit. He was just being nice. I think he tried to tell us a little bit about God. And we're getting in the elevator. We're all leaving anyway. We were going to leave. So we all got in the elevator together. And there I am with this guy and my friend. And he starts telling me about this community of believers. And there was something inside of me. I remember this day as clear as day. I remember the feeling I felt. I remember this guy telling me about it. And this is what I was thinking inside. I need to be a part of that community. It was in me. I could feel it. And I had a choice. My friend Scott was one of those guys that was with me when they put the drink in my drink. And there I was in that moment thinking, I really need to be there. But you know what? I think I'm going to do it on my own. Maybe I'll get down there. We rode that elevator down. He told me about his ministry. He left. And I decided to hang out with that other group of people more. So I kept hanging out with them. So it just led to more nights drinking and doing stuff, and from a few different relationships, short-lived relationships. And it was 9 years later, that I finally found myself plugging into a community. People sometimes they ask me about my 20s. I don't have much to say. I wish I could say I did something amazing in my 20s, but you know what I did? This. Because of the community that I chose to hang out with, we did this. We did nothing. I think about that time, and I think, there are so many times in our lives there are these crossroads. You see them. If you look back, you'll know there's crossroads where you could have gone one way or another. And this is one of those crossroads. And I know for me, I took the wrong choice. I made the wrong choice. I don't regret where I am today. I love being married. I love being here right now. But I do think this. What could I have done if I had those 9 years back? Where could I be right now? What could God be doing in my life? If I had just gotten on track, if I had just gotten around the right group of people. Maybe today, God is speaking to you right now. Maybe through this message. Maybe through a box of chocolates, God is saying to you, you don't have to be in the community that you're in right now, but you can pick a better one. Maybe that doesn't mean getting rid of everything that you believed in and all your friends and just trashing them. Maybe you start with another community. Maybe right now, you decide you're not going to leave this auditorium until you sign up for one of those groups. When they collect the connection cards, because you haven't looked at the catalog yet, you're just going to sit there and figure out which one you're going to be a part of, and then you're going to drop it in the tithe box before you leave, because you say, I don't want to miss out on what God has for me. I say this from my heart because I realized I missed out on a lot because I chose the wrong community. God's got something so much better. When I finally got on track, God did some amazing things, and God's been able to make my life something that I've really enjoyed. Eventually, I realized I didn't need more of the same thing. That's what came to me. I don't need this anymore, the same thing. Maybe these crazies, maybe these nuts, maybe these born-again people, maybe they've got something that I need. And hanging around with them is what I need to do. But perhaps you're like me, the old me. Maybe you're that guy, and you're saying, I can do it myself. I can do it myself. Man, I said that for years. Yeah, I don't need a group to do it. I can just do it on my own. Maybe that's you. The problem was when I was in that position, I didn't realize how poor I was. The Bible says this. Jesus talking to a church in the book of Revelation. He's talking to them, and he says they thought they were doing everything. They got it on their own. We got this on lock. Everything is good. And he says this to them. You say I am rich. I have everything I want. I don't need a thing. And Jesus says to them, and you don't realize that you are wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. That day on the elevator, I was miserable, I was poor, I was blind, and I was naked. And I didn't really even know it. I mean, I knew it, because I knew I needed to be somewhere else. But I wasn't really accepting that. Listen, we have the opportunity anytime we want to do it on our own. Or we can invite or accept the invitation that God is giving us right now. to get a part of a community that's going to help us to grow, that's going to influence us, that's going to help us when we need help, that's going to give us encouragement. And I guess the challenge today for you and me is to say, are we going to do more of the same old thing, to show up on Sunday and leave, or are we going to get more plugged in? Are we going to allow God to do something in our lives that could be amazing? Because he wants to do something amazing. I want to ask everyone to stand right now. Just stand up where you're at, because I just want to pray for you. Because I don't know where you are at, and if you were at where I was at, I know that I need a little bit more help. So I'm going to pray for everyone here. I'm going to pray that we all start thinking that through, that question, is the community I am in right now taking me where I want to go? Lord, I thank you for everyone who can hear my voice. Lord, that you're a good God. God, that you're able to overcome all the mistakes, all the things that we've done. Lord, I know right now there's an invitation for people here, someone here, Lord, to get involved in a community that's going to put us in the right track with you. Lord, that's going to help us accomplish the goals and the dreams and the desires that you have for each and every one of us. Lord, pray right now that you give us the strength to make the decision to be a part of a group or to serve. Lord, I pray right now, even though there's things competing for our attention, I don't have time, my schedule's too busy, if I do that, then this is going to happen. Lord, help wash all that away. And let us see clearly, Lord, that our life is worth a lot more than that. Lord, help us to get on the right track and choose the right community.